ॐ नमो नारायणाय ॐ नमो नारायणाय
Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So last time we were studying Hari Bhakti Vilas. We were in the 11th Vilas, and now we've come to the 12th Vilas. And the 12th Vilas and the 13th Vilas are all, those two chapters are all about Ekadasi Vratam. So we're beginning to speak about Ekadasi Vratam. And we may look at some other texts from time to time to give us some more information about Ekadasi Vratam, especially Kala Prakashika. Kala Prakashika is a standard book on Muhurta. It's important for Vaishnavas, especially if you're going to be a priest, but any Vaishnava, if you're dealing with if you're worried about the Vaishnava calendar, the lunar calendar, or the Vedic calendar in any way, then there are always more auspicious and less auspicious times to do anything or to observe different things. So Kala Prakashika is on Muhurta. Muhurta means choosing a time according to the Vedic calendar or Vaishnava calendar, right, which is more auspicious to do something. And if you have a choice, right, and avoiding those times which are inauspicious. So that's the science of Muhurta. Muhurta is one of the 6 aspects of Jyotisha, which is the astrological science of the Vedas. So Kala Prakashika is written by a Vaishnava, by a Sri Vaishnava, many years ago. It's a standard book on Muhurta, right? So we're not suggesting that everybody has to understand every part of astrology or astronomy. So there are these other parts, Gola, Ganita, and Hastareka, Varshapala, all these different parts of astrology. You don't have to know any of those things, but it's a good idea just for everybody to know a little bit about the calendar, the Vaishnava calendar, how it works, and how to take advantage of good times and how to avoid bad times. Yeah. So if anybody is interested, at the end of this video, there's an email. You can email me, a Kala Prakashika book in English with the Sanskrit in the back for quoting to people if they challenge some point of it. Can be downloaded freely from the internet, and I can give you the link for that. Also, I have prepared some charts and things like that, which are applicable like every day to show what are auspicious times, what are inauspicious times for certain things. So that's the thing. Okay, so now we're going to continue on with our discussion of Ekadasi Vratam, the 11th day of the moon, which is called, of both the waning and waxing moon, which is called Harivasara, the day of Lord Hari. And so we were up to a point where we discussed the general principles. And now we come to a section, and this section is called Ata Upavasa Dine. So Ata means is the beginning of a section, right? Now, right? Or thus. Upavasa generally means a fasting day, but it literally means upavasati means to dwell or to live, and upavasa means to dwell close to, or live close to, or remain close to somebody. So this is Hari's day, or the day of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So on that day, the idea is to observe upavasa by being closer to the Lord, by performing devotional service to the Lord, right? So then it says after that, Shraddha Nisheda. Shraddha, the word Shraddha means faith, but in this case, Shraddha, which is the long A, right, refers to the ceremonies that we do for the ancestors, for our departed ancestors, right? And Nished means a prohibition. So the performance of the Shraddha ceremonies, or the the worship of the ancestors, is prohibited on fasting days. Is the meaning of Ata Upavasa Dine Shraddha Nishedaha. Okay, so now so this is verse 69, right, of chapter 12, or the last 12 of Hari Bhakti Vilas. So in the Pushkara Kanda, which is a section which talks about the holy place in India called Pushkar in North India, where there is a Kumbh Mela festival once every 12 years. There are different places where the Kumbh Mela festival is performed, the places where the nectar of immortality drip down in 4 places on the earth. So Pushkar is one of them. There's also a Brahma temple, I think one of the only Brahma temples in India, in Pushkar. And so that holy place is described in a section of the Padma Purana. So here's a verse about Ekadasi and Shraddha, and how you should not perform Shraddha ceremony on Ekadasi. So it says here, O Lord Ramachandra, somebody's speaking to Lord Ramachandra, I don't know who it is. If a temporary ritual, right, now here he's translated a temporary ritual as Naimitika. Naimitika means an occasional ritual, right? So Ekadasi is an occasional vow that we observe on the 11th day of the new moon, 11th day of the full moon, right? Every full moon and every new moon. So it comes occasionally. It's not to be understood as nitya, eternal, or everyday. So there's these 2 types of rituals that we normally talk about. We distinguish them from the things that we have to do every day, which are called nitya karmas or nitya kriyas, right? Eternal activities or daily activities, and naimitika or occasional activities that come up every once in a while. So we'll be learning more about occasional activities in the future chapters of Hari Bhakti Vilasa, where it talks about the whole year and the different festivals that occur just once a year. But now we're learning the monthly ones that come every month. So in every fortnight, there's the Ekadasi Vratam. So the fasting day on the 11th day of the moon. So it says here, O Lord Ramachandra, if a temporary ritual or an occasional ritual, such as a Shraddha ceremony, which doesn't come every day, right, is scheduled to be performed on the Ekadasi Tithi, the lunar day of Ekadasi, Hari's day, right, or on any other fasting day, any other day where fasting is supposed to be done, right? One should postpone it and perform it on the next day. Postpone it and perform it on the next day, like this. Now, I think I mentioned before, just at the end of the last lecture, that there are some Vaishnavas there are certainly smarters, people who are Advaitins, followers of Adi Shankaracharya. Those people, the Advaitins, they will strictly follow the date, and they will neglect the fact that it's Ekadasi, and they'll still perform the Shraddha and offer rice balls, Pinda rice balls to the forefathers, etc. Or offer grains, a big grain feast to the Brahmins that they invite to represent the Pitris or the forefathers, the ancestors, right? Vasu, Rudra, Ditya, Pitri Devatas, right? So the Brahmins which are invited to be fed on the annual Shraddha ceremony. So there's different types of Shraddhas. We won't get into that here because it's a very, very complex subject. Okay, so anyway, the Smartas and the northern school of Sri Vaishnavas, right, the Vadagalai Sri Vaishnavas, right, the Kanchi school, they will perform the Shraddha ceremonies on the exact day. Whether it's Ekadasi or not, it doesn't matter. For them, it's more important that it comes on the exact anniversary of the death of the person. However, if the death of your forefather or foremother occurred on Ekadasi, then if you are any other type of Vaishnava, you will observe this restriction and you will say, no, I cannot do it today. I must do it the next day, because today is Hari's day, Lord Vishnu's day, and there has to be fasting, and therefore I can't even offer the rice pinda balls, which are Vishnu Prasadam or whatever. If I'm going to feed Brahmins, also I'm going to feed them Vishnu Prasadam on the Shraddha, right, as a Vaishnava. So I can't even offer those things to the forefathers or to the Brahmins who represent the Pitri Devatas, right? I can't even do that I can't do that on Ekadasi, because we learned in the last lecture, there's a very interesting statement in the scriptures that annam, whatever annam is, right? Annam can mean boiled rice, it can mean rice, it can mean food, it can mean grains. It has different meanings in different sampradayas and different traditions and according to different people, right? But whatever that is, but on the Ekadasi day, that sin personified, or all sins, even up to the killing of a Brahmin, is supposed to inhabit whatever annam is, the food stuff which is called annam. right, on Ekadasi. So we have to avoid annam on Ekadasi, right? Okay. So that's why we're talking about it. So now, text 70, this comes from the Uttarakanda, which is Uttara usually means a later section of the same literature, right? Which was Padma Purana. We can go and look it up in Padma Purana. It says, if the annual disappearance day of one's deceased father or mother falls on the Ekadasi, one should postpone it to the next day. So this is interesting because we're not sure exactly if we're talking about only the annual Shraddha or any other type of Shraddha. So that is a question which we might want to ask somebody, right? Because I don't really know the answer to that, but certainly the annual Shraddha, right, ceremony, the anniversary of the person's death should be postponed till the next day and should not be done on the Ekadasi. So one should never observe such an occasion on a fasting day. So also other fasting days also. So later on, we're going to learn about different days when, in different chapters, different days of the year when fasting, like appearance days of the Lord, like Janmastami, Radhastami, Ramnami, like this, Narasimha Chaturdasi, Vamana Dwadasi, like this. So Varaha Dwadasi. One should never observe such. That'll be interesting actually when we get to Vamana Dwadasi and Varaha Dwadasi, because you're not. The Dwadasi is the appearance day of Varaha and Vamana, but the Ekadasi is a fast day. So do you fast? How can you fast on the Dwadasi? You have to break the fast on the Dwadasi, right? Right, because as we discussed in the last lecture, the Ekadasi Vratam, the vow of Ekadasi, means you have to take a vow at a certain time on Dasami, right, on the day before, and then you you start the fasting either on the night meal, the night meal of the Dasami, the 10th day is rejected, or on the day of Ekadasi itself. But in any case, on the 12th day, right, on the Dwadasi, one has to break the fast. If you don't break the fast on that time during Dwadasi, up to certain times, that's considered that you've broken the whole vow. So it's just as bad as if you eat annam on at that day. So we understand that the vow has to be done according to the sankalpa, the determination that we do at the beginning of the vow. We say we're going to fast from this time to that time from this particular thing. And then we have to break it. Then we have to break it at that time when we said we were going to finish the vow. Otherwise, it doesn't complete the vow. Okay. In fact, it breaks the vow and it's not good. So this is interesting. So if we have Vamana Dwadasi and Varaha Dwadasi, they're Dwadasis. We've already understood that we haven't understood yet, but it's going to come up that the appearance days of the Lord should be fast days. So here it's saying you shouldn't observe Shraddha on a fast day like that. If the appearance day of the Lord is a fast day, which it always is, right? Right. But if it comes the day after Ekadasi, when you have to break fast, when you have to eat, how can you both eat and not eat on that day? Right. So the answer usually is that you observe the fast for the Dwadasi, for the appearance of Vamana and Vraha on the Ekadasi. And you don't actually fast on the Dwadasi. So these are a couple of exceptions. We'll come. We're learning general rules about fasting and about Ekadasi right now, and we'll come to the exceptions. There are many, many exceptions. Okay, so one should never observe such an occasion on a fast day, right? So what we're talking about here is the annual Shraddha ceremony. So in fact, the forefathers and demigods do not accept annam. Here it says food grains, but we probably if we look here, it says here, Rahitan annam, it says annam. Do not accept annam, whatever we interpret that to mean. That is full of sins on Ekadasi. Okay, so text 71. Now from the Skanda Purana, it's stated, the vow of Ekadasi is an eternal function. So what it's saying here is Ekadasi yada nitya, right? So whereas, remember we talked about there's different types of activities and it's things that we do, and we classify them as nitya and naimitika, right? So we do daily or eternal or occasional. So here it's saying that actually, although people call it an occasional vow, Ekadasi is considered an eternal vow. It's not daily, we don't do it daily, but it's nitya in the sense of it's an eternal vow. It always goes on. And it's not something that we do occasionally, right? Which would make it, if we did it occasionally, it would probably be classed as a kamya karma or a kamya kriya, which means for some particular material benefit, which we don't do. But there are some people who do that. They observe Ekadasi, and even if they're not Vaishnavas, other types of Hindus and Shaivas and whatever, they observe Ekadasi because for some material benefit like that. There are some also, but anyway, most Vaishnavas, all great Vaishnavas, they'll do this pratam, they'll observe it. So that this statement is saying it's an eternal function. The vow of Ekadasi is an eternal function, whereas the performance of Shraddha is a temporary ritual. So he's classifying here in Skanda Purana, this quote is classifying Ekadasi as a nitya karma or a nitya kriya, but not in the sense of daily, in the sense of eternal. And Shraddha as a naimittika kriya. So normally we classify Ekadasi as a naimittika kriya also because it's occasional, it doesn't come every day. But here they're just giving a different meaning to the word nitya, meaning eternal. So it's an eternal performance, whereas Shraddha is a temporary ritual. A temporary ritual, I wouldn't call it, again, he uses this word temporary to translate naimittika. It means occasional. It means occasional, not temporary. Right? Temporary would mean it was sort of ran out. No, you have to continue doing the Shraddha, right, for 3 generations. For 3 generations. Because there are 3 generations of forefathers in Pitri Loka, right? After the third, when a person dies, then his father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather, or his mother and his grandmother and his great-grandmother are in Pitri Loka. But the great-grandmother and the great-grandfather will leave Pitri Loka when he dies, when he's elevated by his son to Pitri Loka, if that makes any sense. So only 3 generations of forefathers are considered to be in Pitri Loka like that. Now, this is all according to the Varnashrama system, right? The material Varnashrama system, the social system, which is set up in the Puranas and also in the medieval Shruti Shastras, right? For the way that Indian society was working in the post-Vedic, but the pre-modern era. Okay, so now it doesn't necessarily apply fully for Vaishnavas, because a Vaishnava might be elevated beyond Pitri Loka. He might be elevated to Vaikuntha. He might be elevated to Goloka, he or she, at the end of his life, right? So therefore, that person doesn't go to Pitri Loka. So a question comes sometimes amongst Vaishnavas: why should we do Shraddha? Why should we follow? The scriptures are full of all these ceremonies to do for the ancestors, all these pujas to do for the ancestors, right? Just like there's many, many pujas for deities and for holy places and temples in different places and different vratas and things like that, auspicious ceremonies. There's also many, many pujas for the forefathers, right? In fact, whenever we do another samskar or something like that, we always have to do what's called Nandi Shraddha. We have to appease the forefathers and get permission from them to perform the samskar in our families, like that. Sometimes that's done by people also do a type of Nandi Shraddha for their lineage, their spiritual lineage, their Guru Parampara, like that. Okay, but in any case, we normally start anything by taking permission from our elders, just like we start any lecture with saying our prayers and our offering our obeisances and honoring our teachers. Asmat Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Parama Guru Bhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarva Guru Bhyo Namaha. Right. Similarly, we have to also get permission and honor our forefathers, whether they be spiritual forefathers or material forefathers. Okay. Every person is born into debt. There are certain debts that the people are born into. We have a debt to the demigods for supplying the rain and the wind and the air, all these things, the weather to us. We have a debt to our parents for providing this material body. We have a debt to our country. We have debts to so many people as soon as we're born. So to repay some of these debts, that's why we perform some of these ceremonies like Shraddha, and also things like Vaishvadeva. Every day the Grihastha is supposed to perform the Vaishvadeva, where he he ritually thanks, all living beings that he's indebted to, be the rishis or the guests or the even animals or whatever like that. So, but that's a whole other subject. We won't get into that here. So anyway, the point is one should fast on the Ekadasi and perform the Shraddha the next day, because on the Shraddha ceremony, one can't fast on a Shraddha day. Of course, until he performs the Shraddha ceremony, he has to fast, right? But then after the Shraddha ceremony, he has to take the remnants of the Brahmins that he invited to represent the Pitru Devatas, Rudra Vasaraditya, like that, and Vishnu, and he has to also partake in the remnants of some of the offerings that are made to the forefathers, like that, and which would be annam, most probably annam, right? Because the pinda that we offer in Shraddha, or the full meals that we offer in Shraddha to Brahmanas, they would be classified as annam. Okay, so one has to do that on that Shraddha day. So therefore, you can't fast. So therefore, it shouldn't be done on the Ekadasi. Okay, so text 72 from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. O king, those who perform the Shraddha ceremony on Ekadasi will traverse the path to hell, along with the forefathers to whom the oblation was offered. So definitely not a good idea to do it. Okay, so now, who is the qualified person to observe Ekadasi? Well, we just got through all these general rules, and we got through saying that even widows should do it, should do the Ekadasi Vratam. So I think everybody, but let's see what it says here. So it says, again, ata, now, thus, adhikarinaha. The word adhikari means who is qualified, means who has the qualification, who has the right. Who has the right to perform Ekadasi vow, the Ekadasi vow. From the Agni Purana, it says, right? Grihasto brahmachari cha ahita agniya yatish tata ekadasyam nabunji ta, right? Pakshayor bayor api. Very good. Very nice sloka. Very nice pramanam here. It says here, householders. What is that? Grihasta. Brahmacharis. So married people, right? And students, right? Those who perform fire sacrifice daily, they're going to be usually, maybe not all householders are doing that today, but all of them should have been performing. Both of those, Grihastas and Brahmacharis, have to perform Agnihotra every day. Not Agnihotra exactly. The Grihastas perform every day. They can perform Agnihotra and Ishti every 2 weeks, right? But Agnihotra every day, morning and evening. They should also perform the Upasana Homam and Stalipakam every 2 weeks, right? So, and that's the smarter version of, and the Vedic version is what I said first, the Agnihotra. So there's two fire ceremonies that can be done. The Brahmacharis have to perform what's called Samhita Danam, right? That's a very simple fire ritual, which they do morning and evening. So they do that with wood that they bring for the guru to the Gurukula. So they are living in the ashram of the household. They're living with the family of the guru. Gurukula means family of the teacher, right? So they're living there. They're bringing firewood for the sake of fires, and they have to feed that firewood into the fires twice a day. Okay, and their ceremony is called Samhita Dana. Samhita Danam simply means Samhita means the wood, the stick, and Dana means to give, put to place, right? Of that. So they perform the Samhita Danam. So these two, the Grihastas, the householders, and the Brahmacharis, are supposed to be Ahitagniya. They're supposed to be people who perform fire ceremonies, right? Like that. Even a Vanaprastha maybe a Vanaprastha would also perform fire ceremonies if he goes and lives in the forest with or without his wife. He would also perform the same ceremonies, fire ceremonies, as the Grihasta. So, but then after Ahitagnir, it says Yatis. Yatis means sannyasis. So sannyasis, they don't perform any fire. They're not supposed to perform fire ceremonies, right? They're forbidden actually to touch fire. Fire has a quality of rajas or passion, and the sannyasis is supposed to keep away from fire or things that are made from fire, like metals. Sannyasis actually are prohibited from touching metal. right? So they don't touch metal. That's why they wear wooden shoes, and they have panchapatra. They have all their ritual implements are made of wood and not metal. So they're unable to touch metal because the metal was made by melting the minerals and making metal. So it's a project of rajas, the mode of passion. So they don't touch it because they want to be completely in the mode of goodness, the yatis or the sannyasis. So this in Bhagavad Gita it's stated, it's a sannyasi to yogi cha niragni and chakriya. Niragni, agni means fire. Niragni means no fire. Niragni means without fire, just like nirguna means without qualities, right? So niragni, all right, nachakriya, right? So they perform no work and they light no fire. Who is it? It's a sannyasi to yogi cha, right? The sannyasis and the yogis. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita. So definitely understood by everybody, right? The sannyasis do not perform fire rituals, neither do people who are yogis. Now, what it means by yogis is somebody who is intently following the yoga system. In Bhagavad Gita, the yoga system is sort of presented in short by Lord Krishna. He says, go to the forest, sit on a deer skin and a cloth and look at the tip of your nose, close your eyes slightly and meditate, etc. So that's also possible, right? If you do that, it's a very mentally intensive task. So you don't have time to do all these fire rituals. Okay. So, okay, so what did it say? Householders, brahmacharis, right? Married people, students, those who perform fire sacrifice daily, and sannyasis should avoid eating annam. Remember, annam. We should avoid taking annam on Ekadasi during both fortnights of the waning and waxing moon. Text 74. In the conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati, his wife, right, otherwise known as Uma, or Devi, we can just call her Devi, right? That is found in the Uttarakanda of Padma Purana. Again, we came back to the Uttarakanda of Padma Purana, right? It says, "Oh, beautiful one," Lord Shiva is talking to his wife, right? There is no doubt that the members of all the varnas and ashramas, so here we're talking about that system, that social divisions according to varnas or classes, sometimes called castes, right? And ashramas or stages of life, like that, right? So there are 4 varnas and 4 ashramas in the system, and they are mixed variously to come up with basically 10 different types of people. So including women, right? Including women. So let's also include those in the varnas and the ashramas. Women have varna and they also have ashrama, right? So should observe the vow of Ekadasi. So this is a very, very general, clear statement that who is qualified. So the section that we're in is who is qualified to perform the Ekadasi Vrata. So here it's very clearly stated. If you are a member of the Varnashram society, you are qualified and you have the right, and you have in fact not only the right but the duty to perform the Ekadasi Vrata. Okay, including ladies, including women, and that includes as we saw before, widows. So even though in some societies like medieval Bengali society, they had a different opinion. So here it says in text 75 from Katyayana Smriti, again, there are these different sages, Atri, Brigu, Kutsa, Vishishta, Gautama, Kashyapa, right? Katyayana here, we have Narada, we have Manu, we have different people who have written Smriti Shastras. Again, the Smriti Shastras have to do with the medieval social Varnashram system, which was post-Vedic, pre-modern times, was observed in India. Okay, so here we have one should start following Ekadasi. So this is from Katyayana Smriti. One should start following Ekadasi from the age of 8 and continue to do so until he reaches the age of 80. Okay, so this is very interesting. So we can take this and we can say, okay, everybody should perform Ekadasi, right? So remember what happens usually in Hari Bhakti Vilasa and any Shastra like this, Smriti Shastra or whatever, is that they give general rules in the beginning, then they elaborate on the general rules, and then they give exceptions. So here we have some rule which is giving us some exceptions, right? So in the previous verse, we just heard that everybody, women and anybody in any of the 4 varnas and 4 ashramas, they all have to perform Ekadasi Vrata. It's their duty to perform it. Now here it says, you can start following that Vrata at the age of 8, right? And you can give it up when you reach, if you reach 80. If and when you reach 80, you're home free. You can, they just say it's not necessary for you to continue following. Okay, Katyayana Shmiti, like that. Okay, so now the question is why 8 and why 80, right? And what is exactly meant by 8 and 80, right? So here, 8, Asta Varsha, here it says in the beginning, Asta Varsha means 8 years, right? Now, when does it mean 8 years? The reason why it says 8 years here is because normally the Trivarnikas, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, the 3 higher classes, right, or castes, right, the boys of those classes, they get the Upanayanam Samskara, the sacred thread ceremony, they get that at the age of 8. So at the age of 8, just like they have confirmation in the Christian church, where you have, the bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah for girls, for boys and girls in the Jewish faith, right? At a certain age, the children are considered to become adults. So here, at the age of 8 in the Vedic civilization, or let's say not the Vedic civilization, but post-Vedic in the Shmiti era, during when they had this Varnashrama system, right? The idea was that the samskara of Upanayanam would be like a showing that a person is now becoming an adult, a human, no longer a child, an adult male. It's a coming of age ceremony, right? So they have these ceremonies also, samskaras for not only for boys, but there's also one for girls, which occurs at the first menses, after the first menses of the girl, right? When the girl attains puberty, like that. So anyway, so what does it mean 8 years? Now, it's not exactly 8 years, right, as understood by us in the West or by us in modern times. Normally, what we would do is we would say that a person is born, and after he's born, 8 years from that time is his 8th birthday. But in India, they actually count it in a different way, right? They count the first day, the day that you were born, as your first birthday, right? It's your birthday. It's your first birthday. It's the first day when you were born, right? So before you were born, you were in the womb of the mother, right? So then you were born. So that day is your first birthday. So then what we call in modern times, or in the West, we call the first birthday, which is after a year after the child is born. In India, they call that the second birthday. That is the second birthday. So in that case, we should read here, we should translate this to be 7 and 79, right? The 7th birthday and 79, okay? So a proper understanding of this verse should be before 7 and before 79, like that, in Western terms. Before 8 and 80 in Indian terms, right? In India, normally when somebody asks you your age, they'll ask you, how old are you? So you say, well, I'm 50, like that. And then they'll ask when you talk to Indians, they'll say, if they're 51, they'll say, I'm 50 running. I'll say 50 completed. If I'm 51, I'm 50 completed, 50 years completed. I've completed 50 years of life, therefore I'm 51, like that. So anyway, there's a slight difference in the way people understand the terminology of how they gauge age, right? It's very similar to how you have differences in some places, like if you say, what's the first floor? The first floor in some countries means the ground floor. In other countries, the first floor is the ground floor, then there's the first floor. The first floor is one up, right? So you have to be careful when you're talking to people, when you use these terminologies, first floor, ground floor, right? Or whether you use age, years, number of years, what they actually mean. So this should be understood. So because we're reading it in Katyayana Shmiti, and Katyayana Shmiti it's a medieval text. It's a Shmiti Shastra from India. We should understand these numbers, 8 and 80, to mean what we understand as 7 and 79, right? Another point here is, so actually what they're doing is they're counting also your life as part of your life as before you were born. They're also counting that, right? If your first birthday, they're also counting that. So that we have to look also at Garba Upanishad. I think I might have mentioned this again. In the Upanishads, it speaks about how what is the time when the jiva actually mixes with the material body, when the jiva inhabits the material body, the new material body, right? So this doesn't happen at birth. This happens before birth. But how much before birth does it happen? According to the Upanishad, it's in the 7th month of pregnancy, right? Before that time, the body is growing, but the jiva doesn't mix with that body. That's according to Garba Upanishad, like that. So we can look. There's a discussion of this in the Bhagavatam. There's also a discussion in the Upanishads. So we can have a look at that if people are interested in that also. Okay. So now we continue on. Text 76 to 77. I think that's pretty clear about Ekadasi before the age of 7, after the age of 79. Doesn't need to be followed. The other reason for this is because before that age, the kids are considered children, and they're not considered responsible for their own actions, basically. So whatever karma accrues, whatever sinful or pious action, activity or reaction occurs to a child before this age or after that age, let's say, right, accrues to the persons who look after that person. So either the children in the case of an old person, or the parents in the case of a child, who are in charge of that person, looking after that person. So in old age, we have our children to look after us. In young age, when we're children, we have our parents to look after us. So because those people take care of us and take responsibility for us, they take the karma, according to the system of Varnashrama and karma, right? So we understand that from the Bhagavatam also there's a statement, Guruna sasyat vajinona sasyat pitana sasyat, right? So you can't don't become a mother or a guru or a teacher or a king or whatever, or a father like that, unless you're prepared to liberate, to teach or take responsibility for whoever's under your care, whether it be the subjects for a king, the students for a teacher, or the children for parents, right? They're under your care, and therefore you have to care for them. If they do something wrong, you will suffer the karmic reaction for those people that you take responsibility for, right? Of course, everybody also suffers their own karmic activities. We can't say that somebody does a bad thing or a good thing and doesn't get the result of that reaction, right? Either good or bad. But here, what it's specifically saying is before 7, after 79, those people are exempt from following Ekadasi. And this is because we understand that when they're very, very young or very old, they're exempt from that karmic reaction. And it goes to the people who are actually responsible for them in either very, very young age or very, very old age. Okay? So it's an interesting point. Okay. I think there's probably a lot of 79-year-olds who would still probably follow Ekadasi, 79-year-old Vaishnavas who would probably do that. It will be interesting to look and see if any of the saints and sages or any of the Vaishnavas that we have the history of their lives and they've lived for more than 79 years or 80 years, as it said here in Indian terms, right? Whether they stopped following Ekadasi Vrata or not. That will be very interesting research to do. I doubt whether they, as long as people are able to follow the Ekadasi Vrata, they can. Now, this may bring up some other points that we get later on to it, certain exceptions. If a person is sick, if a person is weak, if a person is physically unable to follow that fasting from Annam during the Ekadasi Vrata, then that's another thing, like that. So then there may be some exceptions that we get later on for people who are unable to fast or unable to follow Ekadasi Vrata in the way that it is. Now, normally we understand if you get the benefit from a vrata, from a vow, if you follow the rules and regulations of the vow. If you find an exception in the scripture to the rules and regulations of that vow, you can take advantage of the exception, but you will not get the full benefit of the vow, right? The vow, to get the full benefit of the vow, you should observe the vow as the scripture says. If you simply don't want to commit any sin, but you want to get through the time period of the vow, whatever it is, without sinning, you can take advantage of some of the exceptions. This is the whole idea. Apavadaha means exceptions or loopholes. And many people will go to Brahmins, they'll ask, what's the loophole? I've been told I have to perform this particular ceremony or whatever. Is there any loophole? Maharaj Ambarish in the Bhagavatam found a loophole by going to his Brahmins, and they said, you can drink water. It's like fasting, but also like breaking a fast at the same time. And in that way, you won't be taking food before Devasa Muni comes back from bathing in the river, because this was a problem in the Bhagavatam. So we'll come to that story later, but I think everybody who's read the Bhagavatam knows that story. That's a very, very instructive story about when we should break the Ekadasi fast on Dwadasi and how important it is not to miss that breakfast. Okay, so text 76 to 77 from Narada Purana, it says, right? One who eats annam on Ekadasi, if he is above the age of 8, right? 7 in our years, right? And has not yet reached the age of 80, right? 79 in our terms, right? Must be considered sinful. Yeah, so in between that, if you eat annam, in between those ages, this is also confirming what was given in the Shmriti. So Shmriti, we just, somebody will say, Katyayana Shmriti, okay, so that's just that Rishi Katyayana, that's just his opinion, like that. But here we have it down in a Purana also, Narada Purana. Narada Purana is a Sattvic Purana, so that's a better level of proof, a higher level of spiritual proof, right? Coming from the Purana, we have this. So one who eats annam on Ekadasi, if he's above the age of 8 and has not yet reached the age of 80, must be considered sinful and therefore liable to be punished by me. We don't know who's talking exactly, but probably the Supreme Lord. Indeed, I will banish such a person from my kingdom. Maybe it's a king. Maybe it's a king who's speaking this. For this reason, O Brahmana, speaking to a Brahman, right? Both men and women should observe fasting on Ekadasi, both in the fortnight or the paksha of the waxing moon, right? Shukla paksha, and the fortnight of the waning moon, Krishna paksha. Okay. So text 78 from Vishnu Dhammottara says, whether one is a devotee of a devotee of Vishnu or Lord Shiva, one must follow the vow of Ekadasi. This is very interesting. So Vishnu Dhammottara Purana, maybe it's not read by a lot of Shaivites, but here's a statement here that says, if you say you're a Shaivite or you're worshipping Lord Shiva, still you have to follow Ekadasi. So whether you're a Vaishnava or a Shaivite, probably, or any other sort of, there's lots and lots of people who call themselves Hindus today, right? Sanatana Dharmis, those people, they all have to follow Ekadasi Bhattam. So this is a statement here. It's one pramana that Shaivites also have to follow. Now here in Saura Purana means it has to do with the sun, right? So Surya, right? So it says, whether one is devoted to Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, or Surya, even Surya. Now Surya, of course, according to Vaishnavas, we understand Surya to be Surya Narayana, form of Narayana, form of Vishnu. So, but anyway, here it says, even if you worship Surya, Shaivites don't consider that to be Narayana. They consider him to be a different god called Surya, like that. So whether one's a worshipper of Vishnu, Shiva, or Surya, one must follow Ekadasi. Okay, so I'm continuing on. Text 80. Lord Shiva made this statement in the Skanda Purana. This is interesting, right? Nashaivo, Nacha Suryo. Right, it's very interesting. Okay, so whether one is a devotee of Shiva or the sun god, in whatever spiritual order of life, right? Na ashrami, whatever ashram, right? Tirtha sevakaha, one may be situated in, even if one resides in a holy place. Sometimes we hear statements by people. They say, "Oh, I live in Jagannath Puri," right? Even if you can take grains, you can eat Jagannath Prasadam on Ekadasi, and it's no sin. Because we live in Jagannath Puri, we don't have to follow Ekadasi. Or I'm living in Vrindavan, or I live in some holy place, and I don't need to follow Ekadasi because I live in that holy place. No. Here in the Skanda Purana, Lord Shiva makes a statement, right? Even if one resides in a holy place, if he eats on Ekadasi. Now this says just eats, right? Whatever he eats, anything. If he eats anything, right, he's considered lower than a dog eater. What it really means is, of course, don't eat annam. Don't eat annam. But some people may say, look at this and say, oh, we shouldn't eat anything. That's also a good idea, right? If you want to do that. So, but anyone who does that is considered lower than dog eater. And here dog eater adhikaro. He's qualified. Adhikara means he's, right? And here swapacha. Swa means dog. Pacha means cook. Dog cooker. He's a dog cooker. Okay. So text 81. O Parvati, one who eats on Ekadasi, thinking that as my devotee, he can do as he likes, is certainly to be considered very sinful and most displeasing to me. Right. Okay. So I don't think there needs anything to be said about this. Okay. If you want to please the Lord, don't eat annam, especially on Ekadasi. Text 82. And again, here we have ata ashaktal pratinidhi, right? So if one is unable to do this, to follow this, he can employ someone else to do it on his behalf. So here's an escape clause, another apavadaha, another loophole, right? Vayu Purana says, if one is unable to fast on Ekadasi for any reason, doesn't say any particular reason, somehow or other you can't fast on Ekadasi, right? Or daily perform fire sacrifice. See what it says here? Ahitagnir atap apiva, right? Ahitagnir. You can't perform your fire sacrifice, right? So you can't do your daily fire sacrifice, right? Or you can't fast on Ekadasi. He can ask his son, a qualified brahmana, to fast on his behalf. If one is unable to fast on Ekadasi or daily performs fire sacrifice but is unable to fast, right? He can ask his son or a qualified brahmana to fast on his behalf. This is also stated in Kala Prakashika in the section on Ekadasi. We can read that if we have to. So text 83. Or if one can give charity to an elevated brahmana, this is called, giving charity to a brahmana according to his capacity. Right? So if you can't fast on Ekadasi, you can donate something to a Brahmin or a Vaishnava, right? But Vaishnava would be even better than offering to a Brahmin. One obtains 100 times more benefit by fasting on behalf of someone than fasting for personal advancement. So if you take a vow to fast on the Ekadasi for somebody else asks you, says, I can't fast on Ekadasi, can you fast for me? If you fast for that person avoids sin. He avoids the sin of not fasting. But he doesn't get any great benefit. He just avoids the sin, right? It's like neutral. But you, by fasting on the Ekadasi for him, you get 100 times the benefit of fasting on that Ekadasi. It's a good deal. Okay, so now, texts, especially if you're going to fast anyway, that's a good idea, right? But if you specifically take a vow to fast for somebody else, then that's good. Okay, so now text 84 and 85. One on whose behalf fasting is observed obtains the complete benefit. Oh, that's interesting. Now, okay. They're saying here, let's have a look at the Sanskrit for that. Sampurna palam. Okay. So unlike what I said before in the previous verse, right, that the person doesn't, just avoid sin and doesn't get any benefit. Here it's saying that one on whose behalf fasting is observed obtains the complete benefit of the fasting on Ekadasi. So if I fast for somebody else, that person obtains the benefit of fasting, even though he didn't fast, right? He ate annam or whatever it is like that, right? So by fasting on behalf of her husband, a wife can obtain 100 times more benefit than fasting for herself. And her husband also attains the benefit of following Ekadasi. So above it was saying anybody who gets 100. So here it's saying specifically, if a wife does it, the wife attains 100 times the benefit. And the person who you do it for also attains the benefit of fasting. Okay, very good. This is the verdict of great sages who are well versed in the scriptures. Okay, so that was coming from where? Is this both from Vayu Purana? Maybe it's from Vayu Purana. We can look it up. Okay, so text 86. From Varaha Purana, it says, on Ekadasi, if one is unable to fast due to some illness, then he can ask his wife or obedient son to fast on his behalf. One can also take help from his brother or sister in this regard. In this way, one's vow of Ekadasi remains intact. Now, we also read here some Brahmin. You can ask a Brahmin to do it. So you can ask a Brahmin or another Vaishnava to fast for you. Again, text 87, we're coming back to the Katyayana Smriti, and we're seeing what else Katyayana has to say about this topic. By fasting on behalf of one's father, mother, husband, brother, or spiritual master, one obtains 100 times more benefit than fasting for himself. However, it should be carefully understood that one should not avoid payment. One should not award payment in exchange for this service. Okay. So you can fast for somebody else, or you can ask somebody else to fast for you, but you shouldn't pay somebody else to fast for you, right? You shouldn't give some reward to somebody for doing that. They will get a spiritual reward, but they won't get, or they may get some beneficial reward, whatever the reward is from the fruit of performing the Ekadasi, but they should not be paid. Okay. So now, text 88, a householder priest can fast. A householder priest can fast on Ekadasi on behalf of a Kshatriya king and obtain great benefit along with his family members. O Brahmanas, text 90. O Brahmanas, those who observe fasting on Ekadasi on behalf of their grandfathers obtain the complete benefit. The one who fasts receives 10 times the benefit, while the person for whom the fasting is performed receives the complete benefit. Of this, there is no doubt. So this was from, where was this from? Katyayana Smriti, all from Katyayana Smriti. Okay. So now text 91 from Markandeya Purana says, if a child, an old man, or one who is ill, right, child, we're talking about below 7 or below 8, right? An old man above 79 or 80, like that, or whichever way you want to. Here it just says Bala. Bala means child, means boy specifically here, but it could be girl as well. Vriddha means old person, right? If a child, an old man, old person, it should be, right? Or one who is ill is unable to observe the complete fast, and if he cannot find anyone to fast on his behalf, he should eat some fruit and milk and drink some milk once at night. Once at night. Payo mulam. Payo means milk. Mula means roots, actually, roots. Payo and mula, he hasn't mentioned roots here, but it's mentioned fruit, fruit, paler, or, it says or, vapi, certainly or. So take milk, roots, or fruits, right? Right, once at night. Once at night. Naktena, in the night, right? In the night. Okay, so here's another example. So let's say you can't follow Ekadasi somehow, right? You can't follow Ekadasi somehow. You feel like you can't fully fast, right? You can't fully fast. Here it's very clear, right? Because it's saying you can eat, right? It's clear that you shouldn't eat at all, right? But let's say you can, maybe you could also interpret it not eating anna. Okay, so if one cannot do that, right? Cannot fast, right, for the Ekadasi, then he can, in the evening of Ekadasi, the night of Ekadasi. Remember we said there were 2 meals a day. There's the noon meal and there's the evening meal, right? Technically, there's 2 meals a day. So the evening meal can be of fruit, roots, or milk, or maybe a mixture of all 3. But here here the word or is used. So either milk or roots, or like, potatoes, or whatever grow yams, or fruits. Yeah. Once at night. once at night. Okay, so by doing this, his vow of Ekadasi will not be broken. Okay, so here's an exception. This is an exceptional thing. So if you can't fast completely, you can take milk, roots, or fruits one time in the night, in the evening. Not in the day, not in the morning, in the evening. Naktena, it says naktena. Naktena means at night, means after the sunset. Right, okay. So now we go, text 92. This is from Bodhayana Smriti. Bodhayana is a famous Vitikara, Sutrakara of Yajurveda, Krishna Yajurveda. Bodhayana Sutras are there. Griya Sutras, Dhamma Sutras. Okay, so Bodhayana Smriti, the great sage Bodhayana has said that if a person is more than 80 years old, again, that means 79 years old in our terms, and is unable to fast, then he should eat only once, and in this way complete his vow. Okay. So here it's even saying you could follow the vow of Ekadasi even after you're 79 years old. And the way you can do it, if you can't fast, right, for some reason, you can just eat once in the evening, right? So some people take this that they can just eat whatever they want in the evening like that. Maybe it's not mentioned what he can eat. But anyway, Bodhayana says that person, if he's beyond 79 or 80 years old, he can just eat one time in the evening. So even those persons are encouraged to perform some sort of vow, some sort of fasting. Text 93, if possible. So those who are afflicted with a disease due to an imbalance of bile, not exactly sure what that disease would be, as well as those who are more than 80 or 90 years, right? Should observe this vow by accepting some food at night, as prescribed by the scriptures. So we'll see, maybe there'll be some other lists of foods which are acceptable to be eaten one time at night. So now, text 94 from Kurma Purana, it says, by eating only once at night, a young boy, an old man, or a sick person can observe the vow of Ekadasi. Right. So if you're preaching to people and you're saying to people, please follow Ekadasi, like that. If they're very young or they're old people, you can say to them, or you're sick or they're sick people, okay, you don't have to fast all day. You could just eat one time at night. Observe fasting during the day and eat at night. Sometimes we hear of these things people do a half day fast. They fast up until noon, which is not really half a day, but anyway. They fast a little bit up to noon or up to 2 o'clock or something like that. They fast half a day and then they eat after that. At least they've done something, so to observe, they've done something. They can observe the vow of Ekadasi in doing that way. So young people, old people, and sick people, right? So in any case, we shouldn't think that the scriptures are so harsh or so strict that it's impossible to follow Ekadasi, because up until now it sounds pretty hard. It sounds very difficult. Okay, the general rules, but there are so many exceptions that we can take from different Puranas and different scriptures like that. So here's one. So young people, old people, sick people, right? How can they in some way observe Ekadasi? Well, they can do it by just eating once at night. Whatever they're eating, right? Just eat once at night. In any case, one should never break the vow of Ekadasi or Dwadasi by failing to undertake some kind of fasting. So if it's Ekadasi, try to fast in some way for some period of time, like that. That's what Kurma Purana is saying. Very liberal, very liberal. So now text 95 says, in the Dwadasi Kalpa, which has to do with Dwadasi, the day after the 12th day, in the Bhavishya Purana, which deals a lot with things that happen in the future, it says, even if incapable of observing a fast on Ekadasi, one should worship his beloved Lord Vishnu and then eat only once at night, whatever food is available, without begging. So here it's saying you can eat whatever you like, as long as you're not begging that food. If you're begging that food, there might be some rules about that. If you're asking somebody else to feed you. If you're unable to fast on Ekadasi, then you can worship the Lord and then Just eat once only at night. Text 96. My dear child, one should not observe the vow of Dwadasi by eating once during the day. One should not observe the vow of Dwadasi by eating once during the day. I don't understand that. You're supposed to observe Dwadasi by eating once only. One who strictly follows the procedure of his vow will never suffer undue distress. Eka bhaktena vatata tata na nir parasiko bhavet. Tadeka niyamin nityam. Okay, I'm not quite sure what that means exactly. One should not observe the vow of Dwadasi by eating once during the day. Okay, so I'll have to ask my teacher about that, and then we'll get back to you. Text 97, Ata Visheshato Nakdadikam. So Nakda means night. So Vishesha means special regulations or particular regulations regarding the night. So in the Vayu Purana, in text 97 here, it says, if one is unable, if one is able to do so, he should observe a complete fast, not take any food. If he is unable to do so, he can eat 5 kinds of milk products. 5 kinds of milk products. Does it mention Panchagavya? Panchagavya is his translation of 5 types of milk products. That doesn't, Panchagavya actually means milk, yogurt, ghee, cow dung, cow urine. And when you mix it together in certain proportions, of course, much less cow urine and cow dung, maybe a drop of cow urine, maybe a very small piece of cow dung, like that. And then the others are mixed in, a little bit of ghee, and it's mostly milk with a little bit of yogurt in it, like that, which is something that we sip for purification sometimes, like an initiation. You'll get to sip this. Purifies the body. It's called Panchagavya. So one can eat Panchagavya, means you can take a little Panchagavya, these 5 products of the cow. It's not 5 kinds of milk products, okay? It's not that you can get cheese and yogurt and milk and kefir and, yogurt, and eat them. No, it's Panchagavya. It said Panchagavya here, okay? So let's be clear about that. If he's unable to do that, so that's the first thing, right? So first of all, try to fast completely on the Ekadasi. Second of all, if you can't do that, then you can take Panchagavya. Panchagavya is a liquid. You take a little bit of it. Sometimes people just take a Achaman sip of it. You can take that. You take a little bit of Panchagavya. Okay. If he's unable to do that, he can eat ghee. He can have a little ghee like that. I'm not into drinking ghee, but maybe somebody wants to do it like that. If he's unable to do so, he can drink some water. Right? So just drink water like that. Well, this tends to make me believe that the complete fast includes fasting from water also, nirjalam. There's a specific Ekadasi once a year called Pandava Nirjala Ekadasi, where it's in the middle of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Easier to do in the Southern Hemisphere because it's in the middle of winter. But anyway, so there's one specific Ekadasi, where there was a benefit. I think Bhima said he couldn't fast on Ekadasi to Krishna, and Krishna said, well, you can fast on that one, and then you'll get the benefit of fasting on all. So some people take advantage of that loophole, that apavadaha, that exception, right? So they don't follow Ekadasi the whole year, and then one day they fast without, one day a year they fast without water at all. Okay, so here it's saying you can take some water. You can't take Panchagavya or ghee, then you can drink a little water. Okay. If he's unable to do this, he can drink some milk. If he's unable to do this, he can eat some sesame seeds. If he's unable to do this, and note that means, well, sesame seeds. Okay. If he's unable to do this, he can eat some fruit. If he's unable to do this, or if he's more than 80 or 90 years of age, he can eat havishyana. Now notice, this is very interesting because it says here, anna, right? Normally, Anna, we try to avoid Anna on Ekadasi. But here it's saying Havishana. What is Havishana? What's the difference between Havishana? Havishana is, normally it is especially rice, cooked on a fire sacrifice. When you're doing the fire sacrifice called Ishti or Shtalipaka, there's two different ones, that you have to actually cook the rice on the fire of the fire sacrifice in a container. Now, some people nowadays, when they're performing those ceremonies, Ishti or Shtalipaka, they cook the rice in the kitchen, they bring it, and then they offer it in the fire. So they don't actually cook it on the fire, but strict people, they cook it on the fire, like that. So that Havishana is also, that's the strict meaning of the word Havishana. Now, Havishana can have another meaning also. Any grains that we use, cooked grains that we use to offer into the fire ceremony. So it might be wheat or barley or rice or all these different grains that we offer into the fire. So Havishana, like that. So Havishana, so he can eat Havishana, like that. A type of khichdi made of those sort of, or type of mixture, some sort of gruel or pongal made of that type of food. If he's more than 80 or 90 years, or if he's just unable to only eat fruits, right? The main principle is that one must follow Ekadasi, even if he has to eat some anna at night. So this is interesting because up until now, the general rule has been no anna. Why? Because all sin, even up to killing Brahmins, all the sins, every single sin, every sin you can think of, inhabits anna on Ekadasi. So whatever you do, don't eat anna. Now here it's saying, if you have to, you can eat anna at night, once at night. So there's a special dispensation here. If you want to, whatever you're fasting from on Ekadasi, whatever you consider to be anna, right? The thing which needs to be fasted from, whether you think it's grains or full rice or rice or whatever you think it is, right? Like that. If you're unable to, if you're 80 or 90 years old, or if you're unable to do that, if you're unable to do any of those other things, just subsist on fruits or milk or sesame seeds or whatever, or drink water or panchagavya or milk, then at night you can eat. At night you can eat, and you can even eat Havishana, anna. Okay? But the main point is you should somehow follow the vow of Ekadasi. What does that mean? I'm fasting for some time during that lunar day. And at night, maybe I have to eat something because I can't go on unless I do that. I could be old, I could be young, I could be sick, whatever it is. Okay. It's another exception. So here we go. From Vivishya Purana, it says, if one has the strength, he should observe the complete fast. If one is unable to do so, he can beg some fruit to eat. He can ask fruit from somebody. If he has his own fruit, he can eat that too. Still better is to obtain some fruit without begging. Even better than obtaining fruit by begging is just, you've got your own fruit, eat that. And better yet is to eat some fruit only at night. Only at night. So remember, this whole section is about some exceptions at night, some things that you can do at night. Many years ago, when I was in Fiji, I was head pujari of Krishna Kaliya temple in Fiji, in Latoka, ISKCON temple. And many of the people there were Vaishnavas from birth, but they were Vaishnavas of the Vallabha Sampradaya. They had grown up in Vallabha Sampradaya, and they had come to ISKCON. So they used to tell me, yeah, we follow Ekadasi, but we eat at night. The night of, we fast all day, and then in the night we eat. Like that. It's okay. After dark, it's all right. You can stop after dark. You can break it and eat after dark. As we'll see later on, it describes about exactly when you should break the fast if you're following the fast fully, correctly. But here it's saying you can eat something at night. This section is all about the exceptional thing of just eating something at night if it's too much for you to fast the whole day. So now, text 99. If one breaks the vow of Ekadasi just once, due to fear of ferocious animals, I don't know why. You're in a jungle and you're afraid of an animal, so you didn't eat something. I don't understand that, right? Maybe there's a story about, I think there's a story in the Puranas, right, where there was a hunter and he went to the forest and he got stuck in the forest at night, so he was really really afraid of wild animals. So he climbed up on a tree so that the wild animals couldn't get him, and he spent the whole night fasting, and it was a codicy, so he obtained the benefit, right? But here it's saying if one breaks the vow of a codicy just once due to fear or during due to fear of ferocious animals, I don't know why that would make you break your codicy fast, such as tigers, or because of disease or carelessness. It happens carelessly, you don't know that it's a codicy and you break the fast. Or on the order of the spiritual master. That's very interesting. If the guru says to you, don't fast today. If the guru gives you something to eat and say, eat this, right? If there's a teacher who advises you not to fast, if that's how you've broken the codicy, because it's still breaking the codicy. But if the guru tells you to do it, okay. Then according to Shastra, he's not actually broken his vow. Right? So according to Shastra, according to this, right, it's also said, according to Hari Bhakti Vilasa, that if you just break a codicy once, you haven't really broken it. If you did it, if you broke it because some tiger was attacking you or something, or some ferocious animal, I can't really understand exactly this point, but anyway, or because of disease, right? Your disease, you couldn't, you were in hospital, you had to go for an operation and you broke a codicy. Okay, it's not a problem. Or by carelessly, you didn't know it was a codicy and therefore you carelessly broke it. Or your teacher, one of your teachers or your gurus, right, told you to break it, right? Then according to Shastra, you haven't actually broken it. Well, that's good. That's good. Okay, so now we don't know where that's from exactly. He hasn't said. So it would be nice if we knew if there was actually a scripture that he can quote for that point. Okay, so anyway, here it says, text 100 from the Mahabharata Udyama Parva, which is a section of the Mahabharata. This verse is found. This is very good, right? This says, everybody should know this verse. This is very important one here. Astaitanya vratagnani apo mulam palam payaha hari brahmana kamyacha guror vachanam ausadam. Water, fruit, like fruits, roots, I mean, like potatoes, like yams, like things that grow under the wall, tubers, under the earth, tubers, right? Milk, ghee, the advice of a brahmana, the words of the spiritual master, right? We could say advice of a brahmana, advice of a Vaishnava, and medicine. These 8 do not break a vow. So whatever vow you're observing, right? Whatever vow you're observing, you can take water. Water doesn't break a vow. This is probably the verse which is quoted by the Brahmins to Maharaj Ambarish. Right? They could have quoted this verse. Water doesn't break a vow. Doesn't consider that you've broken a vow if you take water. If you take fruit, it's fruit, right? Doesn't break a vow. Roots. You had potatoes, you had tubers, you had sweet potatoes, you had yams. So what? They're roots, right? It's like jungle food, food that the Vanaprasthas would eat, right? Milk. Yeah, you had milk, right? Ghee. The advice of a Brahmin or advice of a Vaishnava, right? If a Brahmin or a Vaishnava advised you to do something and you did it, that's not breaking a vow. Even if it's technically, it seems like it's breaking a vow, or the words or the advice or the order of the spiritual master or the guru or the teacher. So Brahmins, Vaishnavas, and teachers, if they tell you something, you can go ahead and follow their advice. It doesn't break the vow. And medicine, if you're sick and you needed something, you had to take something, It never breaks a vow. Okay? So these 8 things are considered not to take a vow. These are exceptions. So pretty much you got a lot of things covered here. All right, so now we have text 101 to 102. Special considerations in this regard. See how it says tatra? Tatra means like thus, right? Tatra, here, right? Or there, right? Apavadaha. Apavadaha is that loopholes, exceptions, right? Special considerations in this regard. From the Kasyapa Pancharatra. So here we have from a Pancharatra, Pancharatra Smritis. The Pancharatras are all about the worship of Lord Vishnu. So especially Pancharatras will be for Vaishnavas, right? Whereas all these other Puranas and all these other Smritis, they may be for other people who are not Vaishnavas, but this specifically is from a Pancharatra. So if an initiated Vaishnava who is engaged in devotional service of the Lord, right, eats grains, what does it say here? Annam. Eats annam, right? Annam, right? Eats annam, or even fruit or roots on Shayana Ekadasi. Shayana Ekadasi is what? We just had Shayana Ekadasi. It's the day when the Lord goes to sleep. It's the first day of Chaturmasya, right? The four months when Lord Vishnu is sleeping. We sleep for 6 to 8 hours a night, normally, right? So out of 24 hours, that's a quarter or a third of the time we spend sleeping every day. So most of us, in general, right? So Lord Vishnu also, the Garbhadakshay Vishnu, he also sleeps for about a third of the year. A third of the year is 4 months, because a year is 1 day of the devas. 1 day of the demigods or the devas is 1 day is 1 year for us, right? So in their day, they sleep. So Lord Vishnu, he sleeps for Garbhadakshay Vishnu. There's other Vishnus also, but Garbhadakshay Vishnu, his time scale is the same as the time of the devas, the devatas. So he sleeps for, like us, like a third of the year, like 8 hours, like 3. That's translates to a third of the year is 4 months, because there are 12 months in a year. So a third of that is 4 months. So the Chaturmasya is the 4 months of the rainy season in India. It's actually 2 seasons, because every 2 months there's a season in India. There's 6 seasons in the year, but it's the 2 months in which the rainy season or the monsoon comes, or the 4 months, excuse me. So Lord Vishnu sleeps during that time. It starts with, people start that timing from different. When we'll come to it later when we talk about Chaturmasya Vratam. There's also vows that you can take for those 4 months, or for each one of the months in those 4 months. People are pretty familiar with it. So when we get to that, we'll understand about Chaturmasya. But where you start Chaturmasya from, where you start the 4 months, you can either start the 4 months from the beginning of the month, or you can start it from the beginning of the solar month. You can either be the beginning of the lunar month, the beginning of the solar month, which will be Sankranti. Right? The beginning of the lunar month will be Pratipada Pratama, the first lunar day, either a light fortnight or dark fortnight, depending on whether you follow the lunar calendar that starts in the light fortnight or the dark fortnight, right? So right there's like 3 different ways you can start it. You can start it also, so on the Sankranti, when the sun goes into the next zodiac sign. You can also start it, right, on the Ekadasi, or the day after the Ekadasi, the Dwadasi, right? And here it said that why is it called Shayana Ekadasi? Each one of these Ekadasis has some meaning. So the Shayana means lying down. So Lord Vishnu sleeps, he lies down and sleeps on that Ekadasi. And then 4 months later, he wakes up. That Ekadasi is called Uttana. So it says here, Shayana Ekadasi, Uttana Ekadasi, and in between it says Parshva Parivartana Ekadasi. So Parshva means side, Parivartana means to turn. So when we sleep, we go to sleep, we lie on one side. Many people lie on one side, maybe not everybody. Many people lie on one side. In the middle of the night, they turn over naturally in their sleep to the other side, right? And then they wake up in the morning. So Lord Vishnu does that. So on Shayana Ekadasi, he goes to sleep on one side. On Parshva Parivartana Ekadasi, he turns over onto the other side. And then on Uttana Ekadasi, he wakes up, right? So some people, like in Udupi, Sri Krishna temple in Udupi, the small deity of Lord Krishna, is put to sleep on Shayana Ekadasi. He's turned over on his other side at Parshva Parivartana Ekadasi, and he's woken up on Uttana Ekadasi. So these are very, very famous. Now, before we said all Ekadasis are equal. Well, apparently, according to this sloka, some are more equal than others, right? So we have some Ekadasis which are considered more important. So the Shayana Ekadasi, when Lord Vishnu goes to sleep, the one where Parshva Parivartana Ekadasi, where he turns over on his side, and the Uttana Ekadasi, these are all considered. So the one that begins Chatumasya, the one that ends Chatumasya, and in the middle of Chatumasya, right? That after 2 months is right. That Ekadasi after 2 months has elapsed, right? Those three Ekadasis are very important. So what it says is, if an initiated Vaishnava, and this is in Pancharatra, remember, these texts are coming from a scripture that is specifically for Vaishnavas worshipping the Lord according to the system of Pancharatra, which is all of the people, all of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas who follow Hari Bhakti Vilasa, and many, many other Vaishnavas also follow Pancharatra. There are a few Vaishnavas who follow a different system called Vaikanasa. We won't talk about that here. But everybody, basically, all Vaishnavas are following Pancharatra as far as we are concerned in general. So now, if an initiated Vaishnava who's engaged in devotional service to the Lord eats annam, right? Or even fruits or roots, right? Because we just got saying that you can eat fruit and roots, right? It says that up there in the last verse that we said, about all the exceptions. Oh, there's no problem eating fruits, eating roots, no problem, right? Never breaks a vow, right? But on Shayana Ekadasi, Parshva Parivartana Ekadasi, and Uttana Ekadasi, right? I, the Supreme Lord, says, I do not forgive his previous and present offenses, and I will place him into the darkest region of hell. So the Lord is making an exception for these three. These three, you should be very strict on. He's saying, be very strict on this one. The first Ekadasi of Chatumasya, the last Ekadasi of Chatumasya, and the one right in the middle. Be very, very careful on those, and don't even eat fruits or roots. Okay. So there's some other statements in scripture about this, which is in Kalapakashika, which we can read sometime if you're interested. Like that, there's a statement the Lord says that I feel if somebody does that, he eats on those Ekadasis, then it feels like he's shooting me full of arrows. I feel like I'm being wounded by his arrows. So it's very interesting. Those particular Ekadasis are stressed. Now, text 103. Elsewhere it said, if one eats fruits or roots or drinks water on Shayana or drinks water, interesting. So there has to be nirjal, right? Without water. On Shayana, Uttana, or Parshva Parivartana Ekadasis, those three Ekadasis which we're talking about, it is considered by me to be like piercing my heart with an arrow. See, I just told you about the arrow thing, right? So this is mentioned in Kalapakashika also. So this is also famously, not just in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, but understood by many other people, Vaishnavas and Hindus also. Text 104, the performance of pious activities and religious rituals, such as the Agnihotra, fire sacrifice, award great merit. Similarly, the great benefit awarded to the person who observes the eternal vow of Ekadasi will now be described. So now we have the next section is a Mahatmyam, or the glories of Ekadasi. Atha Ekadasi Mahatmyam. So this is a very good place to stop today, right? Because Mahatmyams are very, very long. And so we'll get into that next time. Okay. So any questions about that? It's interesting. General fasting rules, and then exceptions, and then exceptions to the exceptions. Right? Like those three Ekadasis you have to be very careful of. Yeah.
Yeah. Never heard that before. That was interesting. The other thing I had never heard was the thing about the having other people fast on your behalf. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. And if you fast on somebody else's behalf, you get 100 times the benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. But one thing was it, you can only ask somebody to fast on your behalf if you can't do it? Or is it something that you can just do because, it's just hard for you to fast? I didn't catch that.
Well, that's what it said. It said if one is unable to fast. So you have to decide whether you're unable to fast or you're able to fast.
Yeah.
You have to decide that.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like if you think about it, it just kind of makes sense then to just get, a family member to do it, because then they get so much more benefit for it. If I ask my wife to fast on my behalf, she gets 100 times the credit she would otherwise get. So, I mean, it sounds like a good deal.
So what happens if I say, I'll fast for you, you fast for me?
What, the next time though? Because you can't do it that same time though, because then you're not fasting.
So one person has to break a codicy. Is that it? One person has to break a codicy for the other person to. That person who breaks the codicy, that person will be fine. He'll have the benefit. But the other person will have 100 times the benefit. So why would anybody want to follow a codicy? He could also always have some other person do it for him, and that person will get 100 times the benefit, and he also wouldn't be blamed for breaking the codicy.
Exactly. In our household, my wife and I just take turns, right? Yeah. Interesting.
Brothers and sisters, husbands and wives, even you can ask another Brahmin, another Vaishnava to do it for you, right? It says that. It said ask a Brahmin, which means ask a Vaishnava or ask a Brahmin.
Have you ever heard of someone fasting for another person?
No.
Not a very common practice then, huh?
You know why? Because here we also have those exceptional verses like that. You can just eat once at night, or you can eat anything at night, or you can eat if you're going to eat, you can eat fruits and roots. And that Prabhupada used to tell, Prabhupada was telling Pradyumna would tell me, he said, Prabhupada told us fruits, roots, nuts, milk. Ecodicity. If you want to take fruits, roots, nuts, milk. Nowadays people go to so many elaborate, they get into so many elaborate types of cooking to cook things that they feel are not, are possible to eat on Ecodicity. And they basically, the Ecodicity food is more rich and more of a feast than the regular food,
Yeah, my wife, for many years, I guess since right after we got married, we discovered buckwheat flour, and like a good buckwheat flour actually. And my wife would either make, while the kids were growing up, either make buckwheat muffins or buckwheat pancakes, and they were quite good. So it's just kind of funny because like we don't really ever make pancakes any other day of the week, any other time. Never made muffins any other time. So I remember like my kids, like even my older daughter that's 18, or actually I think it might have been my 15-year-old. I remember seeing her get up really excited on Ekadashi, oh, great, buckwheat muffins today, like I'm so excited. Or buckwheat pancakes. Oh, pancakes, I can't wait. I know it's kind of funny because it's just kind of like, but still, that's
people have this idea that buckwheat. Now, the thing is, in Russia and Ukraine and places like that, buckwheat is like a staple food for them. They eat buckwheat like wheat, or some Indians eat rice or whatever as a very staple grain like that. So the question becomes if you live in a culture which doesn't eat rice, giving up rice is not a big deal, right? If I can't remember the time. I can't remember when I last ate rice. It must have been when I was in India, right? It was a long time ago, a year ago, almost, right? So
Wow.
if I didn't eat any
That
rice,
little, huh?
yeah. So you know,
I'm not a huge rice eater, but that's a lot. That's
yeah.
that's a long time.
Whereas when you're in South India, when you're in Srirangam, those people, it's funny. There's a saying in South India that South Indian Vaishnavism, there's a rule, no wheat eating. Right, so we have a rule. There's another rule: no meat eating. Right, so but South Indians, there's no wheat eating. They only eat rice. They love rice. They have to eat rice. Rice has to be there. Bengal is the same thing. They have to eat rice like that. But if you go to central northern or western India, it's the rice. It's the wheat belt. So they eat all chapatis and rotis and things like that, and they eat very little rice actually. Maybe they eat some rice now, but in the old days, they couldn't get it. It was in South India and Eastern India, you know, where it's lush, and they would grow rice. Okay, so the question is, if you live in a country like Russia or something like that, where they just grow buckwheat so much, and their staple is buckwheat, should you give up the staple? You should give up the staple. You should give up the buckwheat, right, on Ekadasi? Should you fast by doing that, or is it okay, you know, that you don't eat buckwheat? And that's, anyway, there's so many arguments. There's so many rules and regulations about food, what to eat, when to eat it, how to cook it. It changes from sect to sect and Vaishnava to Vaishnava. So you can never see the end of it. Vedanta Deshika wrote a book called Ahara Niyama, which is all the rules and regulations about foodstuffs. It's probably the latest thing that we have. We can look at Chaitanya Charitamrita also. We can see the descriptions of what Lord Chaitanya ate, and we can see what's there. But basically, you know, today we eat all sorts of things that are not mentioned in the scriptures. All these things like tomatoes, potatoes, cauliflower, all these vegetables, which even chili, which comes from America and not from India, like that. So none of it is mentioned in the scriptures in India. So whether you can eat it or you can't eat it, some people say, no, we're very orthodox. We won't eat it unless it's mentioned in the scriptures. We won't eat it. So we don't eat any of those things like that. But usually I point out to those people, you eat chili. And chilies are from Central America. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but so then
a lot of Indians don't even realize that about the chilies anymore.
They don't know it.
I was eating at a restaurant.
I mentioned it the other time. I mentioned it the other day, you know, in a class by Tiran Ryan, our Sanskrit teacher. And one of the other Vaishnavas there said, "Oh, what about Kashmiri chilies?" I said, "I don't care what you call them. They come from Central America, right?" You don't know. They don't know.
Yeah. I ate at a restaurant one time, and it was so spicy, so much chili in it. And I said, "Hey, you guys might want to because they had just opened up." And I gave advice. I said, "I think you guys should calm down a little bit. Otherwise, you're not going to get a lot of people eating here." And they said, "Sorry, we can't change it. We want the authentic Indian experience. You know, has to have a lot of chili. Yeah, chili's from South America, buddy."
Yeah. Okay. So we'll pick this up next time.
Om Namo Narayanaaya